welcome everyone to Voice of Terminus show number 30. And the usual cast is here. Say hello, Dylan's here.
Hey everybody!
Say hello, Lex.
Hello!
Say hello, Kodiak.
Good afternoon.
And we have with us Jenge. Say hello, mate.
What's up, guys?
So, today's topics, because we're talking about crafting, as you can see from the layout, are race-specific crafting, class-specific crafting, community crafting, and we're going to touch on harvesting and gathering in general and get some more thoughts going. So, since Kodiak missed the last crafting show and he had some really cool thoughts and everything, so we decided to do a crafting show this week. And so let's get it kicked off and start, Kodiak. We'll let you actually have the first words on the general thought of crafting and everything, and maybe want to get everybody introduced into the topics.
Yeah, okay, so let's start with the first one, race-specific crafting. I like the diversity of crafting, that every race, every class maybe might have something special to offer to the crafting world. Not that every warrior or every class, but also make it every race also. So like race-specific. I mean, I don't really know, or more like your certain race. They have like racial mounts. You'd have racial armor, racial weapons, stuff like that, so that it's not just every sword looks the same or every this looks the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or faction, race or faction.
Why not do a combination of both?
Well, you can't. I mean, of course you could. You could do race-specific and class-specific,
What about...
But like I said, that's what's going to bring the diversity, So they're not every warrior. If you got a gnome warrior and an ogre warrior and they're walking around with the same sword, it's going to look kind of stupid,
I mean, they could... I mean, I like the thought coming from Lexa with, having a mix of race and class. But the only way I would see that work is if, let's say... Because obviously you're going to have there's going to be classes suitable to certain races, like ogres and being like maybe tanks and stuff like that. And if you take like a halfling tank, people can do that, okay, but it's not the optimal race to choose to play a warrior or dire lord or whatever. So how about doing a combination of having a separate class specific crafting system, a individual race-specific crafting system, and having one where you get an extra bonus if you have the optimized race and class put together. So you get a bonus on top of that for having a race and a class that kind of work together. Maybe add that as a feature.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that then you're going to have a flavor of the month, or something that's going to be like an ogre warrior is going to be better than an ogre wood elf or ogre halfling or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I mean halfling warrior.
I think what they could probably do is say, like what you're seeing in Jay, you're seeing shamans get alchemy, rogues get poisons, and so on down the line to something that makes sense to be with that individual class. And it could just be something not like game breaking, like a warrior, well, maybe he can patch up armor just a little bit with these kits or something, who knows. But then have race just add certain bonuses instead. So it's not something that's going to be like, oh, I'm going to go with the dwarf blacksmith over the human one because he's better. It's just going to be maybe he has a little less chance to fail on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking like 2% maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's get into race specific crafting. So we have the nine races. I'm gonna quickly go and pull them up so I can actually toss some ideas and questions your way, guys. So if we look at the races, we have the Archai, we have the Dwarves, we have the Darkmere, Ogre, Human, Halfling, Elves, gnomes, and the Scar. So, let's have a look at the Achai. What kind of race-specific crafting ability could they have? As we know, these are guys that work with elementals and stuff like that. Go on, Dan.
I'm gonna have to say, well, since the Archai from the lore, their bodies are made of like molten metals and stuff like that. If I'm recalling correctly from the lore, I'd have to look at it again. But I would say that
elements.
I have to say that maybe jewel crafting or maybe smelting. You know, that should be a craft in general. I think smelting, actually melting down the metals, maybe making a combination of metals that can be used by a blacksmith. So that's what I think they would be good at as far as the Archai are concerned.
Yeah, especially if they're made from clay or whatever, and then enchanted into a being. Maybe they're with the raw elements. Maybe it's more of a harvesting bonus rather than an actual crafting bonus for that race. You know what I'm saying? Because each race should have, like somebody said, you know, dwarves with brewing, ogres maybe a little like a +5 blacksmithing, or, you know, something that gives them a little extra for each of those things. You know, for each of those different crafting abilities or harvesting abilities or something of that nature.
Yeah. Savarti, no, Jen is a guest on the show. And he's one of our guild members. Not a developer. Disclaimer, not a developer.
Yep. Not a developer.
All right, so what's your take, Jen, on the race crafting?
I think that they should stick traditional. I'm not really a big crafter. My only concern is that crafting doesn't overtake the game. I played games where you could get, you know, better gear crafting than you could questing, or than you could fighting mobs, and I just don't want to see the game go down that way.
See, and that's where because in a lot of games the crafters get left in the dust from the stuff that you can go find out in the world, so it's like, why craft at that point? You know, so I want to make sure that it is equal, you know. You can make different tiers of craft, like you guys were talking about grandmastering. So if a grandmaster crafting, the materials that you would need for that grandmaster thing probably came from a raid to begin with. He should be able to craft a raid equivalent item. You see what I'm saying?
Then what's the point of doing the raid?
To get the item to give to the crafter to make something awesome with it.
Well, it's almost like an interdependency. Like, I'm not a crafter at all. I'm a PvEer. I'm a raider. But I know a lot of people that do enjoy crafting. There has been maybe 2 games in the last 15 years that have made me really want to craft. But in the end, it's not me. So what I would like to see is there's some kind of interdependence or some kind of equivalency. So while, yes, I can raid to get this, you know, purple breastplate or epic breastplate, a crafter, given enough time, could do something equivalent to that. Well, because it just doesn't seem right to use them as just a stepping stone. Then all that work goes for nothing once you start raiding.
Well, and also that, like I said, if you guys raid, unless you take down an epic mob, you're not only going to get, like, you know, 2 or 3 items to roll, or, you know, points to give to people or whatever. Let's say there's, you know, some type of enchanted metal or something special, some type of special crafting item that he drops as well, and then it gives the crafters, you know, a reason to raid as well too.
So let's carry on though with the races though in specific. Like, so we talked about the Achai and with elements and metals and stuff. So what about the dwarves? I personally see the dwarves having a special trait towards metals, of course. You know, mithril and stuff like that.
Mining,
and mining, stone and stuff like that, because, you know, they work with that stuff all the time, and live in caves or in big massive halls and castles and stuff in a mountain.
Well, remember their lore. They have something where they actually turn metal into almost a cloth. Mm-hmm. That could be something that's like a crafting component that only they can make.
Yeah, cold dark steel.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, it's cold dark steel. Now, what would be cool there is if they had if we had weight. You know, remember old EverQuest we had weight issues. You couldn't overload your character with too much crap.
Yeah.
This is probably along those lines that they might bring something in where, you can have this metal, or maybe that breastplate that we're questing for or that we're rating for, that dwarf can then take that breastplate and turn it into a lighter item so I can carry more stuff.
Yeah, the good old days when you couldn't leave the bazaar with 1,000,000 plat on your guy.
Yeah.
You'd be stuck at the entrance.
Now, you got any thoughts towards the dwarves? Do you want to add towards what they could have as a very specific element to them in crafting? Beer, brewing.
Yeah, brewing.
Brewing, definitely
I can see
brewing.
that, yeah.
The dwarves like their beer, so you figure. Well, plus these dwarves actually sound like they're in a more cold place too.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. So yeah, I'd say beer mostly.
Okay, cool.
Beer.
See, I would say like
big on the beer.
halflings for like cooking and stuff, because they're picking nuts and berries and whatever they would.
Kodiak,
Okay.
let's go. Alphabetically, dude. Don't do that. I can't. Today I can't.
He's still waking up.
I'm still waking up, dude. I have to say, guys. I
apologize.
actually almost missed the show. Right, so we'll do halfling in a minute. Keep that thought. So Darkmere. This is an interesting one. The Darkmere. We know they're a water race originally and everything. So what could the race? Yeah, I know. I can see where you're going there. I didn't want to really go for fishing. I didn't want to bring it up because that's too easy. The Darkmere.
Well,
what could
not
they
crafting,
do?
That's gathering.
Oh, that's right. That's more of a harvesting.
So what
skill.
could the
In my
Darkmere?
opinion.
What could the Darkmere have as a crafting, very specific crafting thing that would make them kind of special and unique towards other races?
Oh, hey, okay, dragon scale. Because the fish scales, whatever. So maybe they can work with scales, like dragon scales or fish scales, or something like that, as a type of armor or something. I don't know.
What if we go about this a different way, though? What if, instead of saying every race can craft differently, every race just gets a couple items that's culturally specific to them in each craft?
Yeah.
No one gets left out. It's not. You're not really saying that one's better than the other, but you could do stuff like, say, with the Archai, they get more magic resistance on the stuff that's their cultural item, but only they can make it. Whereas a dwarf, maybe it's more cold resistant stuff on it, or cold damage, or whatnot, kind of thing. Or maybe it's just lighter. I mean, who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean,
if
you bring in the elemental aspect, like we were talking about with the race show or whatever, like where if the scars are, because they live in a desert, so they're more for heat or whatever, so they can either plus or minus hot onto their weapons or armor or whatever, jewelry. Same with the dwarves, the cold. Maybe the dark mirror for water damage.
I see. Smarty's kind of touched on what I would actually try and think about when I look at the Darkmere, is something to do with herbs as well, because if you read them, they seem to be a very thoughtful, majestic race that do tend to have a feel of bonding and looking out for other races and everything. So I kind of see maybe giving them like something to do with plants and stuff as well, where they can like make special potions that can maybe heal wounds faster and stuff like that, maybe in that sense as well.
I don't know. Cultural type crafting, I think is cool. Maybe what I'd like to see in a crafting system, perhaps, maybe this is an idea as far as kind of going along the lines of the culture, but each race gets a specific thing they can dabble with in the world. Like kind of what Kodiak touched on, scales, for instance, is a good example. So if you're a Darkmere crafter and you're a blacksmith, you can work with those type of materials that other races can't work with. So now that gives that race-specific, craft a unique item to that race of player. And then you have this other race of player, they have the same thing. They have a unique thing in the world of Terminus where they can manipulate it too. But it doesn't give them a super benefit. But what it allows is they can build those and create those things for other players that are not that race. And then they come and combine those items together to make an awesome type of armor that all races can wear.
Mm-hmm.
So then everybody benefits from the idea. It's not just specifically to this race, you're the only ones that can wear it, but it actually, this race has to build that piece. This race builds that piece. You combine them. Guess what? It's all race can wear it, and it can be class specific ones, or it can be non-class specific ones.
I mean,
I think that's the best way to approach that way would be, to do it in that sense. That way there's no overbalancing, nobody's left out, and there's no, this race is the best because they can craft this thing here. But it gives everybody an equal play within the realm of Terminus that they can actually manipulate it.
And it also brings a social aspect into play as well, because you'll want to meet up with other races and have other races in your guild, etc. And that's what I was going to kind of touch on as well towards the race-specific crafting is, how could this influence a guild as well? If you have different races within your guild that have these special traits, etc., could they add something that would maybe add a little, I don't know, a little
flair, everyone else,
a little bonus towards your guild because you have
I don't
different
see why
races.
not.
The diversity of crafting. And
That's kind of diversity. In a guild. Yeah, that would promote diversity, more socialization, because you're going to have to go to meet people of specific races.
Exactly.
Because all of a sudden it's like, well, geez, I need a dwarf because I need this dark steel cloth stuff, but I also need some crazy space age metal from a gnome to craft this thing. Now, I'm not saying that these are going to be things that are like min-max, number one in the game. No, but it's going to be one of those things where that would be considered almost an epic crafting quest where you have to get something from every single race.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a journey in and of itself.
In itself, exactly.
Because you're going to have to go with that dwarf somewhere to do something. You get that piece. Now you got to go find your ogre or your gnome and go do something and help them to get that.
See, and that's what I was going to get to with
craft.
The community crafting thing is, like I said, so maybe you might have to get some fish scale plate metal from the dark mirror, then go to an ogre leather maker to get some type of a certain type of leather, then get some bindings from a gnome, you know what I mean, and then mix those together, and now you've got some kind of epic black breastplate,
Yeah.
So that would be cool.
So anyway, just to finish off on the race-specific crafting with the races themselves, because we already touched on the first three. What about ogres? Where would you see ogres from a general perspective? Where would their race-specific trait be?
Metal shaping or something like that. More barbaric looking, hooks and blades and probably more weaponsmithing.
Dow? You?
Ogres, as far as the class, race-specific ogres, that's a tough one. They're kind of, if I remember right, the lore, they are a little bit more smart and more militant, right, or more military orientated.
Militant, yeah.
Yeah, so I have to say, I would say actually precise weaponry. Being a military organization, you want to be very precise in your application of your military strength. So I'd say they'd be very fine details, perhaps, maybe very large type of weaponry. Like giant pole arms, perhaps, giant blades, two-handed swords, because you want to show the fear on the battlefield and the prowess. So I'd say maybe large style weaponry that they can actually wield, large stuff that maybe some of the other races can't because of the weight.
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah, I think we're all going to run the risk of falling into the typical stereotypes of an ogre. We're all used to them just being big dumb brutes, and this may not necessarily be the case here.
I'm not. I've always seen ogres as being smart. Always. Ogres are not dumb.
The guy that guy on the side of the road that pays double, for
that's that guy in EverQuest that comes up to you and says, "Me name Frofo, and he'll help you.
The thing is,
right?
Kodiak, to get back to your paying double, it's no wonder. I mean, have you seen the prankers of an ogre, dude? And then the little coin, you just grab it out of your purse and you just slap it down on the table, because you're not going to go and try and pick out these small coins. It doesn't work. So ogres pay double gladly. Yeah, it's definitely. There's a lot.
But I like Dow's kind of look on it, because let's say maybe they did like a +5, sharpening or something skill to the weapon, or because they're precise, or their blunt weapons that they make may do more damage because they have spikes on them or something, because they're a militant race, so they have been fighting battles for the last 3,000 years, you know what I mean, or whatever, so they know how to get the most effective or actually how to cause the most pain out of their weapons that they make,
I mean, they could
Actually
mix it into the lore as well, like Dan's already said, go a bit more in depth with the lore and actually go on to what and actually because the way that Dow's thinking about it is actually the right way to go, and what Alexa said and code it with the scales and stuff like that, and actually have it in specific with the lore as well, and add and work from that base, work from the lore forward into the very specific crafting, because that's what I've kind of always missed, is when it came to the racial traits and stuff where they had like bonuses for crafting. It was just your typical swack of, humans will get a 5% bonus on woodworking, and they'll get this, and going the route that Dow's touched on with having it be throughout the world certain elements and certain bits and bobs what only a certain race can handle or work with, and then have that tied to the lore and get into that, and have some, because I would love to see lore be kind of mixed in with crafting as well. Lore's always mostly been on the adventuring side, storytelling part as well, but crafting's just as important. Crafting deserves to be mixed into the lore a bit more as well. And with the route that Dow wants, has suggested, it would work perfectly to mix that into the lore and have crafting be a part of the lore as well.
I think one of the shortcomings of almost all modern MMOs right now is the fact that they just throw stuff in the game. If it's in the game, it's there for a reason, and it really should matter. I'm not saying it needs to matter a lot. I'm not saying like, oh, an ogre makes the best melee guy hands down kind of thing, kind of racials. No. But, you need to sit down and put thought. Are ogres stronger than a human? Well, obviously, you could probably pick them up with one hand. Makes sense. You hit a human with a 2x4, he's going to be hurt. You hit an ogre, he's probably just going to be a little angry. So more constitution, or maybe it's whatever. If it's in the game, it needs to matter to some degree at least. Crafting needs to matter, lore needs to matter, your racial choice needs to matter, and your class needs to matter.
Yes.
So I got a quick question before we carry on, because Jen's has been silent. I don't know if I missed anything, because I was working on something on the side. Is Jen still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Because we don't see you on cam. That's why you have a Voice of Terminus placeholder map on the screen. So, your thoughts, dude? Because you've been silent. Anything you want to add towards what we've discussed so far?
Yeah, I agree with Lexor. Like, if it's in the game and it's in the lore, it needs to matter. But I also want to touch on what Kodiak said. It kind of would make sense that, okay, I can craft the weapon, but I got to go to an ogre now to get it sharpened. So like I plan on a dwarf, right? I'm gonna craft my dwarfish weapon, but I'm gonna need that ogre to sharpen it. I think that would be good.
Yeah, we were talking about, like, with the community crafting, like getting everybody involved with weapon. We'll get to that, but that's pretty much the same concept that we're thinking too. Is like
you could add that you could use that as a special bonus though, like you said. I mean, I like the thought definitely, but I wouldn't say, if you have a weapon that a dwarf has and you go to an ogre and he sharpens it, you need to have an ogre to sharpen it. No. You can use an ogre to sharpen it, and that will give you an additional bonus on top of it, or you can just use your blunt weapon or whatever, and it's not as powerful as if you would use an ogre, because that would make it special as well. That would make you actually go out and seek. You would go and look for an ogre to add that little bonus to it, because he's going to sharpen it and make it even sharper. And because of his special trait.
How about this? Well, because we know that there's going to be different damage types, because they want stuff like piercing to not be very good against a skeleton, etc.
Exactly.
Blunt do really well against them. What about this? What if, say, you have a mace? An ogre is like a warrior amongst warriors. He's a crafter. Or a craftsman. So he can take your mace, put blades on it, and turn it into a slashing weapon. So he can modify the damage that your weapon deals. He's not doing a huge, big thing to it, but it's still important.
Yeah, but that would cut. There's a lot of things that would come into perspective. Because not all classes can use slashing weapons or.
Well, no. I'm just saying you modify the actual damage it deals, not make it a slashing weapon.
Okay.
But I was thinking, when you started that, I was thinking, oh, that's a good idea. But then you went somewhere else. But anyways, what I was thinking when you started that was like how the ogres could sharpen a blade, but maybe an elf could make a blunt one, being that they're from wood, whatever nature, that, they could do something with a mace or something to make it do more damage. Maybe get a different type of tree or an enchanted tree and, enchant the wood, something of that nature.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So anyway, let's go and move on to the most hated race, I would think, actually, or most not loved race, the humans.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Scar.
Nah, dude, the humans. Humans are always the ones. I always see humans, people always misunderstand humans. People call them boring and stuff. They're not. They're just misunderstood. And they're always a surprising race. So, but in general, we all know in MMOs, the humans were always put there as the most balanced out race, where they would have all the attributes
neutral
and everything, and the attributes would be spread out evenly across the board. What could we do to kind of get away from this endeavor?
Well, because we know that they're going to have like boats and stuff in this game eventually. Maybe not at launch, but eventually they will. They've already said that for traveling purposes. So maybe it has something to do with their boats or something.
Yeah,
or mounts, or
But even if you look at just humans, like the history of the human race, we've proven to be highly adaptable. We're not super amazing. We're not super fast. The best thing we had going for us back in the Stone Age was that we could run forever, because we ran slow. We can eat anything. So we're highly, highly adaptable. That's the only reason I look at humans being, kind of the jack of all trades. I'm okay with that, because it does make me feel like that's a human.
Yeah, and look at D&D too. D&D is the same concept. Even EverQuest uses the concept, though. Humans could be any class too. It was there for a reason, because
most of them.
In most development purposes, the reason why they had humans be able to do everything was because there was some players who don't like the idea of being an ogre, don't like to be an elf, don't like to be any of that. They just want to be a person. So you have to kind of leave that in there. I think that neutral race is a good thing to have, and that they can do anything. Are they a master in any of them? I wouldn't say necessarily, but possibly maybe one or two types. Who knows? But ultimately, I think their ability to adapt and move on in the world, that makes them special. That's the special in itself, is that they can actually advance in any class in the world.
Because they learn faster,
Yeah, they have to adapt. They have like the least amount of restrictions.
They do.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way it should be, because believe it or not, there's people who still want to play humans out there, whether you got this cool looking ogre or this awesome Darkmere. I mean, some people want to play them. So
yep, I'm one of them.
I'd leave it still neutral. I'd keep that in there for the option, because there are those players who just don't like elves and space gnomes and whatever Archai or nasty looking scars and etc. So
any other thoughts towards a human?
Not really. Just
there was some lore about them being builders.
Yeah, I could see.
So maybe they can help you build housing faster or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, or we talked about the outposts. Maybe they have something to do with the outposts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could see them
Woodworking.
being builders.
What are you
You know,
talking
ultimate
about?
builders, perhaps. Go ahead.
What are you talking about? Outpost. What is that?
Well, during the Q&A, Brad talked about being able to put an outpost somewhere in the world for like a house that you would maintain. You know, so like
Okay.
player housing type thing.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
All right, so we'll move along on to the very interesting looking halflings. Where could you see this going for halflings, race specific wise?
Picking nuts and berries.
Mm.
A lot of
Close to the
survival
ground.
style stuff.
Well, that's why I said cooking.
Foraging.
Right?
Foraging,
Foraging,
perhaps.
cooking. You know,
Very, very good at
Foraging.
foraging. Since elves in Pantheon aren't going to go the way of the tree huggers so much, more of the city elves with the, looking fondly on their past kind of thing.
Yeah.
That leaves the halflings as our tree huggers. Not meaning that as an offensive thing. I'm just saying that they're the people who love the forest. So I could see them with an awful lot of survivability skills in terms of foraging. Maybe you get some kind of trapping skills so you can actually find food a little easier. Because I remember in EverQuest hitting that foraging button 700 times a day and getting 4 berries.
What about hunting wise as well? I mean, yes, it's not necessarily their thing, but since they're forest people and everything, they would have a slight bonus towards hunting as well. Leather gathering, for instance.
well, I would say that the harvesting portion of it too. So if it's skinning or getting pelts or pristine, maybe they get a higher chance of getting a pristine pelt versus just an average or low quality pelt.
Yeah. Even if it's 1% extra, to me, I am a bit of a min-maxer at times. If I want to make a leather worker, I'm going for that. But it's still not an advantage to the point where, say, Valencia doing the same thing on a dark mirror couldn't necessarily get more than me. It's just I'm kind of shifting the odds in my favor in this particular area.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the community crafting section when we get into that.
Yeah. So we'll pick up on the elves. Interesting race.
See, when I think elf, I think either magic or like a ranger. So I'm thinking like woodworking for staves, bows, stuff like that.
I would think that would go under the halflings. I think the halflings are more of the woodland creatures. I think they would delve more into the wooden hilt staffs for wizards, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. The elves in Pantheon are almost pushing towards highly sophisticated, snotty types.
Yeah.
Almost like the Takish elves from Norath.
Yeah.
EverQuest.
Yeah.
They blew
the high
themselves
elves
up.
kind of thing.
Mhm.
They look down
They blew
on everyone
themselves
else.
up. Mhm.
Right.
They got too good for their own good.
Yeah, they could be working on in the magical side, maybe doing kind of I don't know. What about the thought of short time buffs as a crafting trait for the elves or something like that? A little potion that you could use that gives you a short period of time, a speed bonus or this or that, and go on.
You could do something akin to alchemy, but with spell scrolls.
Yeah.
Right. When we were going to talk about class specific armor, I was going to talk about alchemy and how I think that you shouldn't be able to create anything that you can't personally cast. So a shaman should not be able to do a lightning potion if you can't cast a lightning spell.
Exactly.
Each class basically should have their own form of some type of, whether it's alchemy or a spell or a scroll or a poison vial or something that they can produce out into the world and trade and sell it. Because why would a shaman be able to make skin spike potions? That's stupid. A druid should be able to. Or vice versa. So.
But usable by all races, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So making alchemy more of a universal trade skill rather than a race or class specific, but based on what your race and what your class can do, that is what you are limited to producing. You know what I mean?
Right.
In other words, you're limited to a line of magic. For instance, like summoning spells are all limited to summoners.
Right. I would say,
sense.
or translocate. Basically, if wizards can port or druids can port, they can make porting potions or scrolls or whatever. You can't. I mean, for a shaman to do a translocate potion to send somebody somewhere is just doesn't make sense.
It kind of takes away the point of giving that certain class or that certain race that ability from the get go. Because if somebody else can come along and then I'll go and build a translocation spell or whatever buff or whatever, it kind of, well, then what's the point of me being here and having that ability? It should be my ability, and I can.
Yeah, exactly. Because what happens in a lot, I think today's MMOs is that they're doing a lot of overlapping, which is actually taken away from the uniqueness of the classes, which becomes back to multi-classing. Now I have a shaman who can create a gate spell. There's no need for the druid. There's no need for a wizard. There's no need for these guys anymore because hey, guess what? I can create a gate spell. And I'm out of here.
Well, to expand on what Kodak is saying, what if you open up alchemy to every class? But it's only limited to things that you can do. So it's like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
exactly.
Me being a wizard, I can make a teleport you to Greater Feydark potion, but the shaman can't. But that also means I'm still casting that port. I'm still getting the money for that port. It's just you choose when to trigger it.
Can we get back to that? Keep that thought process going, guys. But let's finish off with the race.
Oh yeah,
because we're kind of drifting. Yeah, we want to stay on topic. So we have any other thoughts towards the elves?
Elves. Let's see. Everybody's saying
arcane, like scroll making. Spells, maybe bonus making spells for other classes or all the races or classes, I should say. That's pretty much it. Bottling up mana potions, Dow,
you? Anything to add?
It says right in their descriptions that they're artists from architecture to agriculture. Probably gonna have a lot to do with food.
Yeah, as you're trying to base it off of the lore that's already kind of put out there. It sounds like they're gonna be farmers in a sense, so they'd probably be your herbal side of the race, and so I'd have to say maybe farming, some sort of type of farming, growing crops, herbs, plants. More like a botany type crafting skill or a skill that they would have. So I'd stick with that, based off the lore what they got going.
Lex, any final thoughts for that?
Everything that came to my mind was already covered.
Okay, so let's move on to the space looking gnomes, and that's definitely going to be really interesting because as we know, gnomes throughout games, especially in EverQuest, they were like tinkerers and were messing about with more advanced mechanics. If you look at Clackanon, for instance, the gnomes there and everything, they were working with cannons and this, that, and the other. So where could you see Pantheon go with the gnomes from their background of the lore, being from outer space, being entities that didn't have a bodily form, etc., and their role in very specific crafting and being on Terminus? Where could you see these guys go with that?
Sadly, I'd have to say a form of tinkering because with the fact that they are an advanced alien race, they could just do a bunch of little, like, that's what I'm looking for, convenience items. Like maybe they can make you a real cheap light source if the humans can't see in the dark. Or maybe they can make bags that hold just a little bit more or something,
Yeah, I'd say tinkering. I wouldn't allow them to go creating laser guns and laser pistols and black powder cannons. That would totally turn me off, and I'd have to sadly say that I'd have to leave Pantheon.
Yeah, I could see them making fancy forms of crossbows, like that just kind of look almost steampunky, but that's as far as I'm willing to let it slide.
Kodiak?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, like, because they're They don't really have a body. They're like a being, right? And then they wrap it in clothing or whatever. So maybe something to do with spirits, or that they can do some type of exoplasma, buff to your weapon or something to do more damage to spirits or something. I don't know.
Jen,
Yeah, that's a hard one to figure out. I'd say tinkering.
Yeah.
Jen, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think they would be more of like item imbuers, where they imbue items with certain abilities. Like, for example, we were talking earlier about, having the ogre, attach a blade to a blunt item. Maybe they can imbue your item to, hit a skeleton instead of pierce.
I mean, they, since they come from like, a different planet and they kind of advance to a higher being and everything, maybe they have a general or better understanding of Terminus throughout the world, and know all the trade secrets of Terminus, know all about the stones, all about the different woods, all about the different herbs, all about the different kinds of energies that are going around in Terminus, and they can add like bonuses from that perspective, because them being the most advanced race from their being, maybe that could be something as well, that they have the all knowledge, all the secrets that nobody else really knows. Yes, you've got your halflings, your elves, your Darkmere, your Akai, and everything that's spread out all throughout the world that are definitely very interesting, come from different backgrounds. But these guys, they went up to a higher being, became, an entity that didn't have a bodily form. So they must have a really high knowledge of some sort. So maybe they could actually go into a deeper lore background as well towards the race-specific crafting, and maybe reveal secrets as well towards other races. So if you actually meet up on a gnome or gnome, and he could actually help each individual class learn something special. So maybe they could go from that perspective. If you want to really learn the true depth of your racial crafting, you have to go and visit a gnome and learn from them. Unlock the backgrounds from them.
Almost like a crafting mentor.
Yeah.
That would
just
be
kind of
interesting.
just to we're talking about the gnomes. Just kind of give a history here, because I had to look at them, go back to the site to kind of get some information again. But on the gnomes, it says it is a splendid irony that the smallest of the foreign races contains the most mystery. Peerless in the understanding and wielding of the arcane, the gnomes are beings without true physical form due to the events on their homeworld. The meticulous and easily absorbed into many tasks aboard their floating city ship, Skyhold, diligence and service tend to be the highest gnome virtues, along with sound innovation. Expansion is not a cultural aim, and the gnomes have no real enemies, but some do long to face the perils and prizes of Terminus at large. So that kind of gives you the idea, a little bit more background to try to, understand this discussion, or, put it into more perspective, based off the lore and stuff.
Yeah. Anybody got anything to add towards the thoughts on...
The only other thing I can think of is because they're super advanced and they're almost a little bit, energy-ish, maybe they can mess with the mana climate.
Could be interesting.
I mean, my thing is, because they're not doing a traditional gnome, that's kind of throwing my, thought process off with them. So I say, unless they do a traditional tinkering, that's the only thing that I could see. But because everything's like, we don't have a ton of knowledge on them yet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so let's move on to the Scar then. The final race out of the 9. Where could we see the Scar? Especially from their background, them being, what's the word I'm looking for? Their family, clan orientated and everything, so they mix up in different clans and stuff. So where could their race-specific crafting, or where could their race-specific crafting come from? What would you guys like to see if something like that was done? How would that work for them?
Sadly, the Scar is one of those races that, I love it. I love the lore. I love the look. It's what I'm hoping will turn out to be my primary class, race. But I have no idea where they'd go with crafting because they're not advanced. You know, they're from the desert. They don't really do a lot in terms of the armor. They're overly brutal. They're almost barbaric in nature. You know, I think of a Scar wearing armor, and because of the way they look physically, I can't see anything beyond like a chest plate, a helmet,
What
maybe
about
some bracers.
what
You know,
about
so
There-
blacksmith doesn't make sense.
what about actually, you know, because Kodiak actually brought me on the thought there with, you know, talking about the environment being influenced by the gnomes. What about or the mana climate? What about them actually adding maybe bonuses towards the environment? Maybe they've learned to adapt and understand because they come from the desert and everything, so they've adapted and actually found out all the secrets about all the different environments and can help you as a class or a race along with giving you environmental bonuses.
So I got two thoughts on this Scar, right? First off, their ability is to kill crafters. That's it. They just want to kill everything. So that's their ability. No, I'm just kidding. But maybe they make certain food and item for survivability. You know, knowing that they do live in a desert where they don't have a lot of water or, you know, food is scarce, you know, stuff like that.
More of a survivalist craft, I think.
Traps,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Jen, you got any thoughts?
I'm not sure about them. There's not a lot of lore written on them.
Okay.
You know, it's hard
Right.
to read it between the lines when you're looking at them. I think
Yeah,
that
there's
this would be,
there's more like how they came to be and not what they are.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that's where they're going to kind of define their lore, perhaps through storytelling. Maybe they're still trying to find their niche in the story.
Do you guys have any other thoughts towards a very specific crafting of what we could, where we could touch on or anything like that, or should we move on to the class-specific part?
I think we move on to the next. I think we
Yep.
hammer that one way too hard.
Okay, well, we'll move on now to the class-specific crafting, and I hope that Lexa and Kodiak still have the thought process in mind and can carry on, because you were talking about alchemy and stuff like that. So, who wants to kick it off? Lex? No?
I lost my train of thought.
Right,
I'm working
okay.
with like two
Class
hours.
class
sleep tops.
specific. All right, class specific crafting. That's what we're moving on to, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Class specific crafting. I think that would come back to like your spellcasters can write spells, create spells. You know, stick to those type of things. What your class can do. That's where that should go. If you do any type of class specific crafting, it should stick with your class. So what you can do is what you can craft.
So like if the tank classes and rangers and rogues and whatever, if they can all use a bow, right? Then there's no reason why a wizard should be able to do what's the bow when you're making arrows and stuff? What's that called?
Fletching.
Fletching, right? Only those specific classes should be able to do fletching. Same with only, you know, casting classes, whether it's healers or mages or hybrids, should be able to write spells.
Well, the thing is, though, with that, Kodiak, while I definitely agree 100%, I would see the wizard or whoever does it, summon or whatever, who actually does summon arrows. I would see those arrows summoned by a summoner or done by a wizard have a slight different effect to it. So it would be a magical bonus. He could
because those are usually no rent anyway. So when you log off, they disappear.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about an actual physical item.
Oh yeah,
that
definitely.
stores your inventory.
Oh, Dark Soul brought up in chat. How about making consumable spell scrolls? And that would be kind of a cool theory as well too. As long as, like, say for instance, I can write a spell that summons an elemental. It gives a wizard the opportunity to summon an elemental, but not necessarily an elemental he can control, but like an elemental spell that summons an elemental, say for 15, 20, 30, 40 seconds, maybe a minute on the battlefield, and then poof, it's gone.
Yep.
That would be an interesting concept, something like that I could see happening, because that keeps away from going towards making that wizard a mage, but allows him at a certain level, perhaps a certain level spell, and he has to have a skill in conjuration. He has to be skilled in conjuration to be able to cast that spell scroll.
That's actually a really cool thought and way to look at it. If spell scrolls like that can be consumed by any class, like Dal said already, he doesn't necessarily be able to control the elemental or whatever, but that elemental could be weak also. So it might be weak, it might be strong, it might last 15 seconds, it might last 30, depending on where his skill is at, and it definitely makes for an interesting approach in general when we're going out and adventuring, because you might have that summoner who can actually go and do that. He's actually got to that point where he can actually summon or craft this consumable scroll for you to use, but he might not be there. It will always make for an interesting endeavor when you're going out in a dungeon or whatever, and okay, so this summoner doesn't have that scroll ability with him, or can't do it now, so it's going to make for an interesting fight all the time. It's always going to be different. You're always going to adventure and engage into combat from different situations. It's definitely an interesting thought to go on, not just towards summoners, but towards any class that could do this.
I mean, I think that the abilities that can be written on paper or put into a potion or whatever should be limited, right? Because you just don't want to fill your backpack up with hundreds of different fireballs and lightning strikes and all these da-da-da-da-da. As a warrior, guess what? Now I can go out and I can use scrolls, and I don't need anybody else because I can heal myself, I can cast fireballs, I can, melee damage, and I'm wearing plate, so I take hardly any, you know what I mean? Like, then you become the ultimate thing. So I don't want to see that. There should only be specific spells or abilities that can actually put on paper.
This is how you can handle that too, to keep that under control, is that you, as a warrior, for instance, you might say a warrior scar, because this is going to get a little bit mixed here. I'm going to mix you up, so hopefully you can kind of keep along here with me. Okay, so I make a warrior scar. He has one skill. He's a warrior, or say a dire lord even. He has the ability to conjure. But over here you have the gnome. They don't have the ability to conjure, let's say. Okay, just an example. They don't have the ability to conjure, but they have the ability to, what's the word I'm looking for? Aberration. Okay, so now you got spells specifically that have to be cast by that specific line of magic. Okay, so conjuration, you have to have a point in conjuration. The scar, its race attribute is conjuration, let's say. So now he can cast, if he puts points in it, he can cast conjuration spells. But they're very limited spells. They might be like level 1 to 10. That's how powerful they could be. They can never be powerful to where they can make them more powerful on the battlefield or outbalance the other class. But it's something there for a last-ditch effort. Say he's going down, the group is suffering, he's failing. Hey, guys, I got this in the backpack. He fires up a summon elemental that's going to last for a minute. That distracts the mob and maybe gives the time for him to either res somebody on the battlefield to try to get him back into the fight. Just something, a different twist, some last-minute, last-effort ditch, who knows, whatever it is. But they have a specific skill. Each race can have a specific skill in magic line, perhaps, or a consumable potion even. But it keeps them limited, and you keep it under control in a low-level type spell line. But I think people could use these in different situations. Each fight, I mean, you might need that last minute of damage, and somebody happened to have that summon, a bolt of fire. Bam.
It's definitely
there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways that, even from a developer point of view, that you can actually limit that. Because you could say something like, say you're level 30, you get a scroll to do Ice Comet, That's fine. You got to be the level that the wizard needed to be to scribe the spell. So in this case, we'll say 40. Okay, so right there, you can't use it. Yep. Say you get to 40, you still have the scroll of Ice Comet. Even though you're casting it at level 40, the damage that it outputs is going to be that of, say, half your level. So as a level 20. So instead of, because you're not a wizard. You should be happy that you could cast something at like a level 20 wizard's level. Will it do the 2,000 damage that the wizard does with it? No, absolutely not. In fact, chances are, there's a good chance it's going to get resisted.
Yeah,
because you're
could fizzle.
as level.
It's just like throwing the apple at the monster to distract him from, making that last strike and knocking down your tank or whatever, or
Right.
your cleric.
Mhm.
So you go and use that scroll, and you toss the apple at the monster. He looks at you and goes, "Hey, did you just throw an apple at me?" That's the kind of idea I see how it could really work, and it does make for an interesting approach.
Well, with
towards the combat.
reading through chat, it kind of makes sense now. Actually, what I was saying. So let's say that you put like a 2-minute timer on a damage scroll, right? And any of those like summoning scrolls or porting scrolls, they have to be done out of combat. You couldn't even do those in combat. Like, you know what I'm saying? So if you put timers on, I guess that would limit the amount of usages that you could get throughout a fight. Just like a potion, it's got a 30-second recap before you hit another health potion.
No. Consumable scrolls are one-time use.
Yeah.
You never get to use it again.
No, I'm saying, what I'm saying is, if you got your entire backpack full of scrolls and you're throwing fireball, then you're throwing lightning.
No,
and then
you can't.
Right?
No, you can't.
Because you're not the caster for that spell. That would put an undue mental strain on you. Because you're just like, I don't know what the heck I just did, but I've got a raging headache. So you might only be able to cast one every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But you could also, instead of making it offensive in nature, why not just make them purely defensive in nature?
That too.
Yeah.
I mean, the shaman can
add a resist
for 20 constitution or stamina. Well, I cast and I get 10. I'm by myself. Every little bit helps.
Yep. Instead of
That's not going to make it so that I can win.
You could put a 5-hour cooldown on a consumable scroll spell.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the only way. That's the only way that would make sense.
But then again, too. But it's all by level, and it's also by rarity too. I mean, you might give this crafting skill to a high level wizard, or a level summoner, whatever it is. A high level crafter would be the only one who could actually craft that stuff. I mean, shoot, like we were talking earlier, you can give each race a specific part of a crafting quest or a crafting idea, and they all have to come together to create that ultimate piece. This could be one of those ultimate spells.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say, say there's a craft that's just called Spell Scribe, okay? That I make consumable scrolls. Well, I need to get paper from this race or this class, but I have to get the ink from this one.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this just gives me the components to say, here, you can scribe something now.
And here's the chance too that you're gonna even fail on crafting the damn scroll too, because I want that back into crafting as well.
See, I actually enjoyed. I did a ton of crafting in EQ2, right? And in the early age stages, right, you used to have to get vials from one crafter, and then you had to get regiments from another crafter in order to even make. And then they changed it a few years into it.
Yeah.
Made it so easy that anybody could do it. But I like the fact that you had to rely on other crafters to make your stuff.
That's the way it should be. But MMOs have gone the way of, oh gosh, we got to make money, so let's make it easy for everybody.
They don't want to
make them work.
Play.
They won't want to play. We're too afraid. We'll screw up our balance. No, they need to go away from that and go into the challenge, because believe it or not, why do you think EverQuest 1 is still technically rolling with diehard fans?
Yeah,
Pantheon will get a diehard fans. Yes, diehard fans of Pantheon will continue to play because they keep it challenging. And what do people like to do? They like to overcome the odds and overcome the challenge, and they'll work for it. That's what it's all about.
But
those
that's
are dedicated.
Think of your most fondest video game you've ever played. Right? It doesn't matter what it is. It could be Tetris, it could be Super Mario, it could be Witcher 3 or Dark Souls. When you think real hard on it, you remember things that were super hard that just aggravated you, made you so angry. Fighting a boss, then you beat him, and then all of a sudden, the world was a diamond. You had chocolate raining from the sky, trumpets sounding from the heavens,
rainbows everywhere, Care Bears and purple lightsabers and purple horseshoes and green diamonds and blue clovers.
The world was amazing. It was worth all the hardship. But
that's how it is. That's the way it should be.
It's like, if they work and get frustrated, they're going to stop playing. Maybe for a little bit, but when a boss beats me, like when I was running raids in EverQuest, when we died massively, didn't even get him close to dead. Yeah, we were all pretty bummed. But the next week it was sign up for raids, guys, because we're gonna kick them in the bleep this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so let's
go.
Let's get Jenge. Let's get Jenge's thoughts. Are you still there, Jenge?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
So what's your thoughts on the discussion so far?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a little bit more traditional than most guys, and I have a tendency to offend. But You know, I think that this game needs to be hard. I mean, EverQuest was tough, man. You know what the draw of being an EQ was okay. I'm sitting in a dungeon. I'm farming this. I'm trying to get this shit done, and all of a sudden, you know, a big guild comes in and wipes out a huge dragon. You know, that was the draw for me to continue to play.
Mm.
You know, there was level 50 content and level 3 content all in the same area. As far as like the scrolls go, you know, I don't know. I think crafting a scroll, you know, it shouldn't really be that much. That it shouldn't have that big of an impact. You know, you can't just load up a guy with a bunch of scrolls and have him, you know, like Lexor said, just cast Ice Comet. You know that.
No,
that
there's gonna be limitations.
Yeah, it's got to be just
Yeah.
a tiny little boost to where it's like, if I was with a group, I wouldn't even bother with this thing.
Mm.
But if I'm solo, every little point counts, kind of thing. Because, God, what game was it that had those? They had scrolls that would drop that would use on people. I think it was EverQuest 2, was it?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I could see high level players being able to craft small, low level cleric spells or something like that, perhaps for lowbie clerics or something to use on newbies. I don't know. But you'd have to be limited. It'd have to be a challenge. It'd have to be hard to achieve. It's not just something we're going to give to you type thing. And I think that's where we're kind of on the line. I think everybody's in agreement. It has to be something, you know, all right and decent, but not too overpowerful. Not something you can abuse. It's got to be balanced, but it's something there to craft, or it's an idea. I mean, this is what we're all talking about: is crafting, how we can do this and put it together. You know, class-specific type crafting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So somebody just Savardi said. So like clerics and crusaders, death knights or whatever, dire lords. Sorry, they should be able to craft invisibility versus undead potions. Nobody else should be able to. Well, maybe enchanters too, because they can have visibility to everything. But like for a shaman to be able to brew a invisibility versus undead thing doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
like it's not one of his abilities.
Given the past, given the developer's past, stuff like buffs that give your group or your party stuff like, okay, Shadow Knights and EverQuest had an ability to give themselves a weapon proc to steal a little bit of life. It was direct damage, 40 damage, 40 health kind of thing. And in EverQuest 2, they expanded upon that and made it so that it was group wide. I'm almost positive we're going to see something akin to that. It might not be a full group, but it might be like, hey, I want to make the rogue, give this to the rogue too, kind of thing.
I mean, I don't want to see like Feign Dead potions, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes monk specific.
No. See, you know? this is where the balancing thing would come into play. We're just throwing ideas, but no, you wouldn't want to do that to where it damages the class interdependency.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not going to give the shaman ability to cast Firebolt.
You know, like getting onto the faint death of the monk, I could see something like the monk giving you an avoidance scroll, so you get an extra avoidance bonus. You're not going to get faint death. It makes no sense. Definitely, you know that should be.
The monk gives you a book based on martial combats and arts, and he gives you ability a 10-minute ability to do avoidance.
Yeah,
you have to read the book and consume it, so it's a consumable buff in a sense.
It's the same like with your summoning your elemental thing. I don't think that any class should be able to summon it except for summoner. Now, can you have a scroll with maybe a scroll of arrows that somebody could put in their backpack, and when they run out of arrows, they can click on it and poof, now they got arrows.
Yeah,
that would be
an
approvable scroll that I would see would be useful more than having an elemental pet that was 20 levels below me that would take 2 hits and be dead. Wouldn't be worth the money.
It's like, you know, you keep it defensive in nature.
Misunderstanding it.
You take the largest imbalance issues out of it, because when you start adding clickable stuff for offense, that's when you run into a lot of imbalances, because all of a sudden, you know, well, now I've got a scroll that adds a proc to my weapons, but my rogue has a bunch of haste and dual wielding and double attack and triple attack. So all of a sudden now his DPS skyrockets. So everyone plays a rogue. And then you can do the same thing with the monk, right? But if you just this is all defensive,
and
they're only minor.
So about class specific, I just think that every class like don't give. If your class can't do that ability, they shouldn't be able to craft it.
Yeah. And we're not saying like you need to be able to cast a spell to use the item. That's not what we're saying. I think that's what some people are thinking. No, we're saying that the person that makes the item should be able to use that spell and then give that to somebody else so that they have a one-time use of that spell, maybe nerfed a little bit, you know, but, you know, and that's going to cost materials. It's going to cost money. So you've got an extra layer to the economy. You've got something else you can possibly craft. You got your money sink for the developers so they can the economy at a good value.
Does anybody else have anything class specific crafting wise they want to bring into the mix, or do we want to move on to community crafting?
Class specific is a very hard thing. It's a very touchy subject with a lot of people. It's very controversial. I mean, because I can see where it can be exploited. It could be it could be misconstrued and abused. So it's one of those very carefully thought out processes that you'd have to do. And honestly, Lexer is probably right on a lot of this. I think it should be mostly either defensive or utility type consumable scroll spells. Because once you start playing with the powers of different spells and classes and putting them into scrolls, you tend to overstep the boundaries, and then you start beginning to blend and going to the multi-classing thing.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think it should be more defensive and utility.
Yeah, it shouldn't be anything that I can't cast on you, hand to you, or do to you. Like if it's a healing spell or a buff or a summoned arrows or something or a translocation, those are the ones that you should be able to be consumed.
Right, so just to sum it up to everybody out there, on today's crafting discussion, class-specific crafting was evolved around the idea of having scrolls be crafted by the class that he could pass on to other members in the group for a one-time use. Dow, do you want to go and toss out the disclaimer real quick?
Oh, disclaimer. Okay, everybody, we're disclaimer time. This is just a disclaimer. It means that we are only speculating that some of the things we're talking about are not going to be in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. We're just giving ideas and all that stuff. The developers do watch the show, and they take a look at some of our suggestions, ideas, opinions, even yours. So please, if you decide to jump on and give your opinion or thoughts in our process, please, we're doing theory crafting and brainstorming here. So that is our disclaimer.
Alright, thanks.
And once again, we're not talking about general crafting, blacksmithing, or whatever, because any race, any class can do those ones. We're talking about class-specific only.
Yeah, so when they release...
Spell writing.
Yeah. When they release more info on crafting and everything, we'll get more into the individual aspects of it. This is just theory crafting for ideas, like Dow's already said, and Kodiak. To get the ball rolling on how we can advance crafting, make it a bit more
different,
and bring it into the lore and make it more important and make it usable and actually important throughout the game. So that's all we're doing here. And once we get more information, we'll start getting into all of that. So we'll move on now to community crafting. And who wants to give the thought? It looks like Kodiak was ready to go on that, so we'll let Kodiak loose on that because he kind of brought the idea in for community crafting. So what do you mean by that, Kodiak?
What I mean is that community crafting would be having an item or a thing. I took horses for an example, right? You've got your mount, and you need to go to a blacksmith to get horseshoes. Then you have to go take it over to a leather worker to get a saddle. Then you have to take it to a jeweler to get some kind of ornamentation. And each one of those things can either add speed, or let's say the leather maker can give you saddle bags for your horses so you can store stuff. Your horseshoes will make your horse go faster, stuff like that. So that every single generalized crafting trait has something to affect on you. Like you have to go and seek out each one of these things, whether it's housing or outposts or your mount or even an item. Even if we talked about this, I think last time too. Let's say you found a breastplate out in while you're adventuring. Well, you take that breastplate and have it imbued by put some gems added to it, or you take it and you have the blacksmith make it stronger, give it more AC. Then you take it to a leather merker and he adds some padding to it to give it a little bit more protection or something like that. Like having more than one crafter work on an item, basically.
Yeah. And there's a little disclaimer that I want to put out there. We're not saying that this is something that, if they were to consider this, that we would want to see it required. That's not what we're saying. And we're not saying like every single person can do something to this one item. We're saying maybe one, maybe two, maybe three slots where it's just like you got to be picky, because if you can add everyone, then all of a sudden, you can boost power of items super crazy. But
yeah, because depending on
what we're trying to say is this will allow us to take a crafted item, go to our friends, go to our guildmates, go to a stranger, have them help us out a little bit, add a little flavor to our item.
Yeah, it's like having like an AUG system or whatever, right? So basically, you can enhance it by ×2. Now, if you wanted to take it to a blacksmith and have it more AC, or if you want to take it to a jeweler and get it imbued with a magic resist or something like that, or you could take it to a leather worker and have more padding or whatever, or the mix and match, however, to make that item your item, to fit your personal needs of how you play your class, something like that.
Yeah, this community crafting thing, it kind of goes back to I always like this theory that I kind of come up with, the idea, which was to involve every crafting profession to partake in the process of building an item, because everybody's always I want it where crafting's important in a game, and I want to be better than some of the raid gear. Well, here's my theory on it. Yeah, you could have that type of crafting, but you can't easily come by it, and that's what a lot of these players are whining about. Well, I want the best gear in game, and it shouldn't have to be raid gear. Well, guess what? You should have to work for it, and you should have to make it. And so it should be a long, enduring process to create these items that they're so specifically desiring. And that's why I came up with the idea that every crafting profession that they decide to implement in game has a particular place within the building process of that item. And it might require a Grandmaster Jeweler, but guess what? You can only be one Grandmaster Jeweler. You cannot be all the dang crafting trade skills. I get tired of this argument, well, I should be able to do every crafting skill. No, you shouldn't. Because in real life, you become a master of one type of specific trade or craft. So that's what it needs to be. And if you can make a diverse amount of different skills and make a Grandmaster in it, the Grandmasters get together, now they can affect this one piece of armor with a Grandmaster augment, that they can augment this piece of armor for you. That's the key to make this a very inclusive, but also you can make some outstanding gear for the game that could be almost raid specific or close to raid value.
Yeah.
Maybe a few points less than a raid item because you want the monster on Terminus to be super special. But I can get a breastplate that's maybe 10 points off of that ultimate breastplate from that dude.
Yep.
So I could see player crafting being important in this aspect. But a lot of people always whine and bitch. It's like I want to be able to do it all. No, you shouldn't be able to do it all.
Nope.
It should be community-based, community-implemented, and it takes time to get there because you're going to have fizzles, you're going to have failures along the way of crafting that piece of armor. But once you've made the gem of awesomeness, now you got to get something. Now you got to get that breastplate of awesomeness and combine them. But then you got to find that Grandmaster in this, of padding, bam, and add it, and you just keep adding, and finally, you got that ultimate battle breastplate right there, perfectly pristine and in condition, ready to wear. But it's a long journey to get there.
And you got to farm this stuff too, so you're not just going and getting
exactly,
whatever. You
exactly.
Find that rare item to bring it to a master crafter.
Yes. What I'm saying is I'm just generalizing how the community can put in on a piece of armor. Just one piece. Yep. I'm not talking about all the specifics to get there. What I'm saying, to summarize it all up, it takes, say, 10 trade professions. Each 10 of those Grandmasters must put that work into that one breastplate for you.
Because if we're
to get that ultimate goal.
Because if we're talking about, making crafting important and making the items that are crafted almost as good as dungeon gear or raid gear, it has to have a process that makes it hard to do. I definitely
Exactly.
agree, 100%.
Yeah, just as difficult as a raid mob.
Because it makes
exactly.
You want to be
That's right.
special. You want to
Yeah.
be special. You want to be special. You want to be cool and everything. And that's why I've always said, like,
Gem of awesomeness.
if you're a crafter, and I think as well, to add to that, you shouldn't be able to do it from the get-go. You would have to go and craft and learn your profession and become a master of that profession before you can even call yourself, hey, I'm the guy who can go out there and craft you that almost equivalent to raid gear or to dungeon gear equipment, because that will make you special as well. That will give you that feel, because you're 1 out of 100 who's reached that level.
But but like what Dow was saying, you're 1 out of 100 that can do blacksmithing, but you also need to find that 1 out of 100 jeweler, and that 1 out of 100 leather maker, and that 1 out of 100 fletcher, in order to combine it into something epic.
Yes. That's the whole key. It's got to have built with failures, and I think a lot of people get wrapped around. Well, wow, it was just pop it in the oven, and I got it. It's 10 gold bars, perfectly pristine condition, in 5 minutes. No, it needs to be failure. Yep. You got to have a percentage of failure, And like we said before, crafting, you come to a plane where you can do all the crafts, but you come to that plane and there's a big message on your screen that says, "Hey, idiot, you're about to go Grandmaster." That means you can no longer Grandmaster any of those other skills that you're generalized in, but you're going to take this route. Do you accept? And once you accept it, that's it. You're the Grandmaster in that specific skill. You cannot go back. You cannot rewrite. You cannot pay a fee or a fine to go backwards. That's where it has to be. You got to have your give and take. And once you choose that profession, that's it, man. You're on your own. That's your course, baby. Crash course to ultimate awesomeness or ultimate awesome failure. Plain and simple. Bring back the risk reward.
Back interdependence, risk versus reward. Make me feel like when that completes, I'm king of the freaking universe. But I mean, like because I'm not a crafter, because I'm super picky about my crafting, my ideal crafting is something that I can do from level 1 to level whatever, max level. I'm still relevant throughout the whole thing. I can still help people out, but I can't do it all myself. I can be a Grandmaster blacksmith. I can be okay at making swords, but I'm better at making the breastplates, kind of thing. I'm better at the shaping of that, It's just what I do.
Exactly.
Because what's happened...
Dark Souls Omega is right. Just real quick, people will search for your services.
Exactly.
Because once you hit that ability, you're going to be a cool dude on the server, and people are going to come to you because of your reputation. And they're going to look at your prices, all that stuff. It's all about reputation and making that top tier.
Because that's
what it's all about.
Look at crafting throughout other games and how it's evolved and how it always ended up. At the beginning of EverQuest 2, like Codex already touched on, every crafter was needed for you to do your profession. Then that got scrapped away. It made you feel duped, because everybody could go and craft anything they want. And I want, and I've been, crafting for me is really important. And the way I see it, I can spend my whole entire time in Pantheon just doing crafting, because that's what I want to do. But if that's the case, if I want to have crafting be just as important and valuable to adventuring, etc., then it has to have a purpose. Because I don't want to see me put tons of hours into crafting and then get stooped on because, hey, guess what? Your gear is worthless now. Because, hey, we're going to hand out everything and make the most awesome gear in adventuring. No, crafting, if it's going to be important, it should be hard. It should be really long. You should have to really think about what you're doing. But it should have a purpose. Crafting should have a purpose.
And also, when they come out with expansions, that's the other thing I always hated too, is so when they come out with expansions, they always have something good for adventuring, new raids, new zones, new whatever, and then the crafters would always get shit on.
Right.
Yep.
See, if I could if I could sit at the table for just one crafting meeting at VR, all I would say very plainly is, please make me feel like I'm a crafter and a supplier of goods. Don't make me feel like I'm just some guy making crap.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's all I want.
With expansions, you can expand on that and create other types of gear. If the new raid boss is gear, but like I said, you could always keep it just a little bit low the raid boss or equal to the raid boss, depending. But it has to be achieved. You can't take the raiders' hard work and their efforts and minimize that either, because they're taking the risk to go on that 2 or 3 hour raid. So it should take you, X amount of months, even a year perhaps, a good year to craft the breastplate of awesomeness. Because if you're just a log-in casual player, you're a log-in casual player working towards the breastplate of awesomeness, it should take you a while.
Yep.
But if you're going on a raid and you kill, Trachanon and he drops the breastplate of awesomeness, guess what? You deserve it because you went on that raid with all the other community and you worked for it and you got lucky on that roll. Congratulations.
That's why I've always pushed for, taking the crafters through different levels. Like Dal's already said, you go through your professions and then you get to a crossroads where you have to decide what you want to master on. So now you've mastered on that, and then you can still carry on doing your thing, and then you become maybe a city crafter. You get invited by your city where you were born or whatever, like say Throne Fast for the humans, and you get to become a city crafter, which is also a rare thing to achieve because it takes a lot of time consuming and a lot of work to achieve. And that's the kind of things I would like to see happen throughout the crafting experience, that you get to certain points of life with your crafting and you advance yourself, because that's all it's got to do with community. You become a city crafter at the end, and that gives you a sales bonus, for instance, or a resource bonus, or it gives you the option to actually advance the city and help out in the city and stuff, or open up a shop in the city, but you have to earn it, or hire minions and stuff. So it gives you a sense of purpose to go and do something, and go out and try and work towards that goal.
Yeah, that's what crafting needs.
I could see that Kodiak's really passionate about crafting, and I understand that you guys want to make an item that's just as good, maybe a little bit less than the raid mob. But dude, you're gonna spend months. This is not. I mean, in my mind, this is not gonna be like World of Warcraft, where you're just going in there and killing a guy with 10 dudes. Like, it's going to take time, planning. The people that you take into that raid are going to matter. How they execute their tune is going to matter. At least in my mind, it needs to. I spent months trying to get Trachanon down. Okay, we spent months. We spent months trying to kill the sleeper. Months trying to plan to skill. And you read, you collaborate with different people. And I think that is the same. Whatever you do as far as raid and killing raid mobs, that same aspect needs to be brought into the crafting. You're going to have to collaborate with other people on how to make that item. Yeah. You're just not going to be able to go in there and make it, because that's going to ruin it. That's going to ruin it. Why would I go and spend hours, right? Everybody logging in at 6, planning to meet these 25 to 30 people down in this dungeon, kill my way to that friggin' boss, and then get one breastplate to drop when I can have, Kodiak craft 10 of them. And I don't need to go down there anymore. That to me is gonna, that to me, I don't know, that's a tough call.
I know exactly where you're coming from.
Agree.
I used to be a hardcore raider. I used to be in a raiding guild, and EQ was one of the best on the server kind of thing. I know exactly where you're coming from.
Same here.
But it's like this. I mean, it's still going to take Kodiak hours upon hours upon hours to build that thing, and I would like to see him have to go to other people to meet halfway. What I would like to kind of see, because with raids, I've raided so much in my career that it's just kind of like a freaking slot machine. That's how it feels nowadays. What I would like to see is, okay, I've got a breastplate. We'll say it's $1 stats just to make this easy. 1 to everything.
Okay.
We kill the boss. He drops the breastplate that has +2 to everything. So that's marginally better than what I have. But what if it's also part of a quest? It's a quest item that offers you a quest where you can take it to a blacksmith who has to go to other people to get or you have to go to other crafters to get the materials to make that now a +3 to everything breastplate. So one step up. And even though you're wearing that +3 to everything breastplate, say you get 2 or 3 bosses down the line, another breastplate drops. Well, that one just happens to be +4. It's marginally better. It offers the same kind of thing. So instead of just getting your loot, now you've got a fun little quest to do that you can do when you're not raiding. And
Yeah.
it's involving every crafter.
Mhm.
Every crafter is relevant. Well, I mean,
Yep.
not every crafter, but you know what I'm saying. Because
Yeah.
a breastplate wouldn't need, you know, a jewel crafter will say, you know, logic.
That's
I
early EQ with Kunark. Remember Cal
that
Draw Kill, right? You'd go in there, you'd kill the raid mob, you'd get
Yep.
that breastplate, but then you'd have to go work your faction with the friggin' dwarves to craft that breastplate into, something better than what you
Yep.
had. Now, that's another
See, I
thing.
love that.
Yeah, I did
I love
too. That was great. That went away, even
But
with
it
later
involves-
EQ.
it
All that
only
was fun.
involved the players instead of NPCs.
Right. Yeah, that was
But-
fun.
But here's my ultimate thing to just finish this discussion real
Yeah.
quick, kind of sort of put it a little bit to rest, is the fact that what I'm saying is that these crafters will spend hours upon hours, like I said, even up to a year, maybe a year and a half, because they're casual players, they're not raiders, so they're going to have to work for this. This ain't going to be World of Warcraft. You throw a couple gold bricks in a gold oven, bam, I got 10 of them now. Woo, awesome, cool. 5 minutes wait. No, we're talking months. I mean, you're going to have failures. Because the crafters in EverQuest had failures. They never, ever, 100% of the time created an item. I've tried 50 items and lost all the materials until I finally got the piece. And that's what I'm saying. Is it's going to be built with fizzles, the percentage of chance of building it. Even the Grand Master gets everybody involved, and he gets his part, and he goes to create the awesome breastplate, and bam, he actually had a fail. Holy crap balls. Now he's got to do this shit again.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? Now he's got to grab everybody up together again, create that breastplate, take it around, and have chances of was he going to make it or not. That's what I'm saying. There's going to be failures built in.
Yeah, and even with the fail, maybe you don't lose everything. You just lose a couple things, and then it's like not a massive, oh crap, I got to start from the goddamn beginning, and there's a year's worth of work. It's just, yeah, this really sucks, but I still need your guys' help because I need some more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being set back a year, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month or two, maybe because I'm casual. If I was hardcore, maybe a week kind of
Right,
thing.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, so because it's kind of getting like whoop. I think Dow's put it to the put it on the point. Crafting's going to take time, and the viewpoint for community crafting, as you can see from the discussion here, is working together and actually becoming really special because crafting
independency.
Yep, independency and becoming special and being one of 100 or whatever who have actually achieved it. That makes you feel good about yourself. Spending that much time involved in crafting instead of going out and adventuring. So let's move on to the final one, and then we're going to slip in quickly something that we want to announce as well. So we're going to move on quickly to harvesting and gathering. So harvesting and gathering, Kodiak, do you want to have your first say?
Sure. Dal and I were having a little discussion earlier. We're like, you know what? We're going to take this to the mat. So basically we're talking about the difference, like what harvesting things should be nodes, what should be drops, what should be, mined, gathered, all different types of different, not just having everything be drops or everything be nodes, but having a mixture of all of the above. I feel, like you're not going to, I think you should be able to chop down a tree, but then, and gather herbs and stuff like that, but you have to kill animals to get pelts.
Yeah,
pelts to be a drop.
The way I see it, basically, if you look at the real world, gold, etc., stone, wood, anything, it's always gathered and harvested. But what they could do is to mix it up is they can add your normal wood. You go and chop down a tree, boom. But you want that special wood, it's dropped from a monster or whatever. Yeah, or it's found in an elven forest, or it's dropped from elven monsters,
Black Dagger
Keep, etc., etc. So it should be a mix.
And Dow said earlier too. He was like, hey, maybe you can go mine a node, but also if you go kill a dwarf might have ore on him also. So you have two different options to gather that ore. You can either mine it, or you can kill mobs for it, but you'll still be able to collect it.
Yeah, you just have the skill up in mining. Oh, geez. Oh, no, I have the skill in mining, too. That's right, baby.
Yep.
That's how it works, bro.
Yeah, and actually, it would be kind of cool to go back and forth. So,
So-
let's say you mine copper, right? But then the next tier maybe is a drop, and then it goes back to actual gathering skill, and so on and so forth.
I have a question for you guys. I know in EverQuest 2, I think it was in EverQuest as well, when it came to harvesting and gathering, you could gather anything. You could gather rock, you could gather stone, you could gather this, that, and the other, wood, and all that lot. Do you think there should be restrictions? Should you have to pick a certain, profession like woodwork, wood or stone or stuff? Or should we be able to go out there and harvest and gather everything?
I think the same thing like what Dal was saying is that at a certain point, let's say if the skill level is 300, right? Up to 150, skill point, you should be able to gather anything and everything. But if to take it past that 150 benchmark, then you'd have to specialize in forestry or mining or gathering or whatever. But the lower levels, I don't think you should handicap anybody. They should be able to craft their own armor and make their own jewelry while they're in the starting city and start their adventure off right.
But then you achieve a grandmaster in those skills because it brings in the interdependency again and the economy, because now Joe Blow Schmuckatelli is awesome lumberjack. You are an awesome gold miner. So now you guys are important people, but you're no longer an awesome lumberjack. You can get the basic trees, but the fancier trees, you have to go to awesome lumberjack for, because he can mine them. So that actually creates more socialization, more markets, and more, all that stuff to help players interact and work together to build and craft their items.
Yep, definitely see that, because depending on what kind of crafting specialization I have, I'm going to have to think about, what am I doing? I'm blacksmithing, so I want to, get that special metal. So I want to go and specialize on getting those special metals and everything down the road. And if you give it, like, say you can go out and gather anything. So you're gathering everything, and then you're becoming like a sole provider and flooding the market with stuff. And, yep, definitely, I 100% agree that it should be limited also at a certain point of time.
Because it'll control the economy a little bit better, and then you'll have your time, your money sinks eventually too, because you might have to buy stuff, and then you can buy mixtures to mix crap in to turn this, that, whatever you got to do, put glue and paste to build fletching, all that stuff. So there's all those other things you have to build into it to actually take the money out of the economy as well.
Yeah. Go on, Lex. You're shaking your head there, dude.
I have two schools of thought, one on each side of the fence. On one side, any idiot can pick a flower. Any idiot can pick up a stone. Any idiot can cut down a tree. But on the flip side of that, not every person can identify one flower to another flower. Hell, I couldn't tell you anything beyond what a freaking dandelion is.
Jesus, don't
who's to say that while you're mining, you won't even know what kind of ore that is. You'd pick it up thinking it's gold and it's fool's gold, So, can anybody do it? Technically, yeah. Can everyone identify the materials you're gathering? No. Can everybody learn? Yeah. But Savardi has a very good point here. I mean, what if the gathering is open, but the refining is the skill?
Yeah, I can see that.
That too.
I mean, and an easy way to, when you worry about stuff like the economy, because the economy is crazy hard to actually balance and stuff, because I have even worked on programs that would predict the economy. Basically, there's a very easy way to level out the economy that no one ever freaking does in games. Say there's an overabundance of oak lumber, okay? So you tweak the recipes to use a little bit more lumber now. How hard was that?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, there is an overabundance of lumber, but it's slowly going down because more is being used.
It's like in your real markets. You have your primary sector, you have your middle sector, and you have your territorial sector. Which basically means your primary sector is the people that go out and actually gather and harvest and mine and refine this stuff, and then your middle sector would be your crafter that takes this stuff and makes the items out of it, and your territorial sector is the people that go out and sell it. So I can actually see adding splitting that up between crafters, you can pick your craft, become a blacksmith or woodworker, etc., etc., etc. But you, as a harvester-gatherer, if you specialized in refining something, you can then turn that gold into, you know, shiny gold or a special kind of gold, or that wood into a special wood, and then that gives it a bigger value as well, because you specialized in refining wood, you specialize in refining rock, and then that opens up a new economy market as well. So you don't have to be a crafter to be able to find special stuff and make.
So what you're saying
stuff.
is you have raw materials, then you have refined materials, and then you have crafted items.
Yep.
So you have 3 different
I can
skills.
I can actually see that.
Why not expand upon the crafting model which is just a 2-tier system? Gather, create.
Bag o' dirt.
Why not say gather, refine, create? You've created a whole new tier, a whole new set of skills, a whole new level that is absolutely still valid and needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like you said, you could take that dirt, and if you're shifting through that dirt, you can find different elements throughout that.
Yeah.
Throughout that rubble or whatever.
Yeah, there's a comment made about the economy, because everybody's worried about the game economies and stuff like that too. I don't believe in the global market. I think the global market, the auction houses need to be abandoned. It's a bad idea for an MMO. It's stupid. So what it is, it needs to be based off of cities, districts where you're at in your cities. You go to that city, that's where you're going to find it. What's ever there on the vendors is where you're going to find your stuff. And that's why I believe we should have player vendors or guild vendors where they're actually selling these things on the market, on their own little separate little tiny market stall. Because when you get the global market, then you can sit here and inflate prices. Players can do that. But if they don't have the market and they don't know that, hey, gold over here, this plank over here is pine plank is 10 silver here, but in this city, pine planks are very rare, so now it's up 30 silver here. You don't know that because you're not over in this city.
Yep, that makes 100%.
What do you
that
guys
makes
think
sense.
about? What do you guys think about having your banks linked, right? Because if you put, let's just say you put items in a bank in Throne Fast, and then you go all the way to the other side of the world, and you open a bank over there, should you be able to get those same items?
I think the bank should be closed.
Yep.
I seriously think the bank should be separate cities. Because what happens is, that's where you start playing the manipulating game and passing stuff, and it just...
If you're in Avendir's Pass collecting pine, right, and you're chopping down trees and getting pine, and then you go into the Bank of Thronefest and you stick it in that bank, right, you should only be able to get it out from that bank. That's where it's stored.
I think the bank should be basically, your bank should be based off either where your character's created. So it's a Thronefast character. Your bank is Thronefast. If you're in a guild that's located within Thronefast, your bank, even regarding you being a Scar or an Ogre, etc., will be Thronefast, period. Because your guild resides in that area. And the idea from DAO is absolutely fantastic. Because that makes you actually go and travel throughout the world. I mean, look at it. Look in real life. Yeah, you can come to Germany, you'll find Bratwurst, but you won't find that in the US or in China or there or there or there. It's something special. Yeah, so you go out and travel, and then depending on where you are, it's going to be more expensive.
We want people to go explore. We want people to go, hey, I need to go find this item, so I want to go travel to these 7 major cities to find the items that I want.
Yep.
Yep.
And it makes you look for that certain thing and help each other out. So DAO could be crafting, but he needs a special kind of wood, but this wood's not found in Thronefast. He sends us off, and we go in all 4 directions and visit all these other cities, and we find that thing. We find that special wood that DAO's looking for. It gives you something to do within the guild and amongst the community.
Within the game too.
Within the game too as well. And having different, let's say, stock prices, because it's kind of like stock. In Thronefast, Pinewood's 30 silver, but in the Darkmere City, it's like 3 gold. Yeah, definitely.
Because there's not enough.
You could take it and put it on your person, and then travel all the way over to the other zones, and then sell it there. Maybe you get more money in one market than you would another, but you're limited. You can't just sell tens of thousands or hundreds
on the market right there to everybody on the server. It has to be separate and broke up, because then your economy is going to actually fluctuate and change. And you're never going to know the prices, because somebody might buy all this out. Now there's none on the market over here, so I'm going to travel here and put some back up on the market. and then that player can come along and finally buy some that he couldn't get before. So you're moving around to the different cities, and you can deposit your stuff around the cities, but it's going to require you. It's going to cost you in travel, whatever it requires, whatever they decide to do. You're going to have to travel. It's going to make you travel.
I'm definitely.
And that's another good way. That's another good way to make the higher level tunes travel to the low, because they got to go through the newbie yards to get to the cities,
So let's go and get Genji's thought and then Lex's thought on this idea, because I really definitely 100% support that. Jen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't believe that there needs to be an auction house, a global auction house. I think it has to be. I remember East Commons, right?
Yep.
So you had to go there to get your shit, and if you didn't go there and get it, you were done. So you had to be there. It was a central located hub. You had to be there. You met a lot of people there, And like I remember on Tuesday, man, I bought a rucksack for, I bought a 12-slot rucksack for, I think 5 or 6 silver, and on Wednesday that thing was 2 gold. You know what I'm saying? So that is going to eliminate most of the problems that we have now with that auction house type. And I'll give you a good example. I got a gaming buddy named Creek, right? And we played Star Wars together, and that guy bought out specific crafting items. He just bought the entire market, and he did it for like 2 or 3 days, and then he put it all back on the market at an extremely high price. And because he owned it all, they had to pay it. And he ended up with we bought a guild hall doing that, or a guild spacecraft or whatever that thing was, And the same thing will happen in EverQuest in this new Pantheon game if they do that, in my opinion.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And then by breaking up the market into like 6 major cities or whatever, then that way it'll alleviate somebody going around and buying up everything all around,
And to touch on what Jen just said with the East Common market thing, while that might have been cool, guys, I do prefer the thought that Dan actually brought in, spreading it out between the major cities. Because that makes you go out and adventure instead of going to one common place where the markets are going to be. Because, while I might be socializing there and everything, or standing around for hours selling my goods, no, it should be spread out. Make the world immersive. Make me go out and adventure and travel and visit these places. And also, don't forget as well, faction comes into that as well. I might be a good little. Let's have a look.
So there goes your human.
I'm a halfling, but I can't go over to the ogres and go and walk into their town and go, "Hey guys, I'm here to go and look at your goods." They'll be like,
"They're gonna kill you. They're gonna kill you." So faction's gonna be based too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what made East Commons. That's what it made East Commons, is that I didn't have to try to invis in Freeport.
Yeah.
I could just go to East Commons. But made it a good centralized hub.
Well, yeah, even if it's just the zone just outside of each major city or whatever,
I mean, they could have like outside black markets and stuff where the little good ogre goes and sells to the halfling. There's stuff like that, but it should be generalized, spread out, and everything. So let's go and get Lex into this, because he's been sitting there all patient and all quiet, and then we're going to move on, I think. Because
I have to have a sleep.
Come on, Lex.
I definitely hate global markets. I look at it because I care about Pantheon. Even though it's not out yet, I do care about it because this is the last MMO I'm going to take seriously. The global market, I look at, if I can exploit it, other people can exploit it. And I can absolutely exploit a global market or auction house system. Absolutely. Easily. Super easy. Now, if you make me have to go around to different cities to check stuff, you run into the thing where technically a wizard with teleport could corner a market, but I mean, let's face it, your inventory slots are going to be limited. Your bank slots, if they're constrained to a single city, you can't just pop all this material in the bank here, go down here and pick it and pull it out. So that levels that out. But at the same time, who's to say that 500 other gatherers aren't going to be getting the same thing? It makes it harder without a global market to corner a market. And I know this from experience because I cornered markets in old EverQuest from the East Common Lands tunnel, because that was close to a global market because everybody went there. So when you take away your global market, you force people to get out there and to gather, to adventure around, to try and find these things. You get to see very interesting things. Like you get to see how the crafting market influences what zones are busy. Say a large batch of clerics just came up in levels, and now they all want a breastplate, a very specific breastplate. It's the thing to have, you know. So all of a sudden, you're seeing a lot of your gatherers going off to these mountains where this ore is, but some of them aren't bound to because it's out in the middle of nowhere. They're not bound in the same city. They're going to different cities, and now you're seeing price fluctuations. You're seeing a live, thriving market.
Mm-hmm.
This is immersion.
So
That is almost the definition of immersion,
so
because everything
Exactly.
feels alive.
Dark Soul has a quick question here as well. While we're talking about that, let's maybe come on to that. How about a resale cooldown for an item you just purchased?
Yeah, I think it should be different. If you
Yeah.
buy an item to put it on yourself or to hand to somebody or whatever, that's one thing. But if you're buying items just to put it right back on the thing at a higher rate, yeah, I think there should be limited.
And what they could do is as well to keep it kind of on the balance and everything is because pinewood is a resource that's highly found in let's say Thronefast.
Avendir's Pass.
Avendir's Fast or whatever, yeah, that is going to be really cheap to sell in Thronefast. So regardless what you do, if you go over from let's say the ogre city and you go over and gather all that and you bring it back to your ogre market, it's still going to be priced at a higher level because it's not a common resource in that region. So you will have to go and sell that for a minimum of 1 gold instead of, let's say, 50 silver in Thronefast. That's another way of eliminating people going around to the different markets, gathering the stuff, thinking, hey, it's cheap here, I'm going to grab it, bring it to my city and sell it there. No, you're going to have to go and deal with inflation, dude. Period. You're going to have to deal with inflation, importing, etc. So you're going to get fined or you're going to get taxed on that item.
You're going to pay the penalties of trying to corner the market.
Yep.
That's true capitalism in a sense. Is you're going to have to pay the dues of, hey, you know what? That's business, small business startup.
And Lex, let me ask from a developer
Well, just think if you were paying people to port you from one area to another, also that all adds into your expense.
And
Exactly.
Let me bring this into the developers' side as well, Lex. The way I see it, that shouldn't be something hard to actually infiltrate into the coding to say, right, pinewood is a general harvesting material in Avendir's Pass, Thronefast area, so they can sell it for cheap or there. And if you go over to the ogre market, you can say that has to be that set price. It shouldn't be hard to do as well.
No, it wouldn't, because what you would do is you could have you add a tag to your item. So you have pinewood board, pinewood board. Say it's Avendir's Pass, so that would be just where it's centrally located. You can use coordinates, whatever, and then you would use the coordinates of this town that you're selling it at, just general coordinates, and then calculate how much distance that roughly is, and then figure out how much it would inflate because of time spent traveling.
Yep. All right, so
it sounds complicated, but it really isn't.
So these are all really cool thoughts, and I'm definitely on it. Dan, I think you have to go and put out a post on that idea with having it spread out. That definitely deserves a forum discussion, I think. I 1000% support that idea. I think it's really cool. I like the idea as well that I brought up with having, or what Savati brought into the discussion and then advancing that, having like harvesting, gathering, refining, and then your crafter.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty cool
concept. I would love to see
a
3-tier crafting system.
Yeah. And again, Coach says he doesn't like the idea of banks not being connected. I personally do, because the banks being connected, then you can start shifting money around and playing the money game with the cities.
Well, I could see money. Money I could see. But items, you're basically let's say you put a book down in your house, you go to work and you pull it out of your desk. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah. I'm sorry that you forgot your blue totem for this cold environment, but that's your problem, dude. When you're at the bank and you knew you were heading that way, bro.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but I'm all about penalizing. If you forgot,
it's all about preparing yourself for certain situations, right?
Exactly.
So you want to make sure that you put what the essential things in your backpack
In your
that you're
bag.
going to need. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's what it's all about. That's what raid planning was all about. Getting your regions, getting all your stuff prepared. So if you left your totem of keep myself from getting cold and frozen, too bad. Suck it up or get a nice mage who'll come along and summon you one for no rent.
So let's go and try and wrap this one. Jen, you got any closing thoughts to this? Or...
No, I'm good.
All right. So let's go into the closing thoughts for crafting, and then we're going to go into that announcement we're going to make.
Oh, yeah.
So closing thoughts on crafting, guys, and then we'll just quickly move on.
Yes.
We'll start with the person who actually hosted this show today, Kodiak. Go for it, dude.
I just want to make sure that crafting is important. It doesn't get left behind. Everybody's, of course we all want to kill monsters and do raids and, quests and all that stuff. But I feel that crafting is such a huge part of the immersion. It gives a lot of people stuff to do when they're waiting for their friends or, anything like that, where they're, gathering, farming, just even leveling it up, whatever. Anyways, I think it's awesome, and we have to definitely add the was it the gem of awesomeness or whatever it is, the the Dow said. So that's a must.
Right. Jenge, your closing thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I think it needs to be important, but not as important as raiding.
Okay.
Not raiding, but like quested gear. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would I go kill 10 of these, come back and get a breastplate or spend... Okay, sorry.
Kodiak, sorry, bro. We're doing closing statements, bro.
Dude. Leave that for next time.
Tear them up after the show in the channel, man, in private.
Next,
they're going to take care of this in the parking lot.
I know you're excited, Kodiak. Right, Lex, your closing thought, dude.
Well, I think it's safe to say that we're all in agreement. Crafting is stale. Crafting is not done right. It hasn't been done right in a very long time. Please, VR, sit down. Don't necessarily take what we're saying as gospel, but please just consider it. Consider bits and pieces here and there. I do want crafting to be on par with raiding gear, but the effort needed to craft it needs to be equal to the work I'm doing raiding.
So. Yeah.
Maybe add things a little questy, to it, and have fun with it, but do something different.
Yep. Cool. Down?
Crafting, I'd say, Lex is right. It hasn't been done right in a long time. I think they need to bring back penalties, failures, all that. Build the interdependency of crafters, make it so where they have to work together to bring that socialization back to the game, to make friends, allies, to go on adventures and go on raiding, etc. Because that's what's happened. And when I can go off and craft my own little thing here in my corner, I don't need the rest of you people. I'll just sit here and tinker over here and build my stuff and sell on the global market and become a rich king. So, they need to destroy that, tear that, because that's what's destroying a lot of MMOs today. So, make crafting important, make it tough, make it, exciting that way. Do it with quests, do it with tinker. I mean, whatever it is, just make it important to a lot of people who like crafting, because it might not, appeal to Jen over here because he really could care less. He wants to raid. So fine, he's got his part of the game to play, but make it where crafters, people who like to sit there for a couple hours and tinker and build stuff, make it important to them. Yep. So bring that importance back and revisit crafting and make it a little bit more interesting, because crafting has become a very dull part of MMOs now, where if everybody can do it, what's the point? Yep. Why am I playing the game? I'm not special anymore, and as people, we all want to be special and have our own unique coolness within the gaming world or the immersive world of Terminus. So
cool. Yep. So I totally agree. Because people will be actually surprised. There are a ton of players out there who really do love crafting, and Kodiak looks like he's going to explode. So Kodiak, Dark Soul and Mega already said. Dark Soul already said. That you and Jenge meet by the flagpole in 10 minutes. So. Just to summarize again, these are just general, theory crafts and everything, ideas to get the ball rolling, because crafting isn't on the table yet for VR. and we're just tossing out ideas, thoughts, and ways to bring that immersion as well to crafters, because it is important, and there are definitely a ton of people out there who really do love crafting. I mean, I spent hours, days, months, weeks, years crafting, and I would do it again if it's done right and important. It makes me feel immersive and special and valuable to not just the crafting community, but to adventurers, to the game
to other
itself,
players.
to other players, to the cities, etc. So do it right and do it good. Now we're going to move on, and Lex has been a busy bee, a very busy bee, and we brought up the latest screenshot as well while we're preparing this. So Lex has actually revamped our website. I don't know how much of the stuff he's put in, because he only shared a little bit with me yesterday and showed me a few screenshots. So I am now going to go and bring up our new website, and Lex is going to talk about what has happened and what people can now expect and what people can do, especially our guild members and everything.
Yes, and please enjoy this beautiful picture that you see on your screen right now while we pull up the website. And Lex, please go ahead.
So I know to a lot of the users, you're not going to see anything different. It's going to look just, it's darker. Ooh. But basically what I spend a lot of time doing is I'm building up a solid foundation and framework in the background to where we have just right now we have a very basic user management system. We have application systems in here. Eventually you're going to be able to put your character on there. So like I'll use an example of, we'll say, one of these cookie cutter guild websites that people used to use back in my WoW days. Okay. You would go there, you would sign up with your name, and that's your name. Period. End of story. Okay. Eventually what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to make characters on the website that reflect your characters in the game. Now, I'm not saying it's going to follow whatever. You just basically say what class, what race you are, maybe what craftsman you are. You mark it as your main. That's how that character's name is who you are on the website. Okay. Say 3 months down the road you get tired of it. You use the progeny system. You retire that character. You have a new character on the website. You mark it as your main. That is now who you are. All of your forum posts, if you've posted any news, if you've done anything on the website, that's your name now. That is who you are, because that is who you are in the game, But that's just one small example of the things that we're going to be able to do. We've also got a lot of groundwork in here for doing stuff like our ticketing system. We got groundwork for our event system. So you can sign up and we can track who has attendance. The ticket system is going to be for resolving issues. When you're in Pantheon playing, we don't want you to have to deal with issues, even if it is with the guild. So-and-so called me a butthead, and I didn't like it. Well, get in the game and play. Play and have fun. When you're done, go to the website, submit your ticket, your complaint, which not just necessarily complaint, suggestion, anything like that. And it will be handed off to an officer, and they will deal with it the first chance they get. And that way, everything's handled.
Yeah, so you can.
What's that?
So you
guys... Kodiak's looking for that ticket system right now.
It's not there. It's not there. I have the groundwork for it. I've basically got something like 15,000 lines of code that are all groundwork of systems that I will use to build these things. It'll make my life much easier to build these things. But we've also got extra stuff here. If you would go on the website to, I believe it's media, and then go to Twitch, I think it was.
Media.
Let me check here. Yeah, we'll go to media, go to Twitch, and we'll look at that page. So now, when we're online, you don't have to go to Twitch. You can go to our website. You can go to our streams page, and that's us right there, chat and all.
Nice.
Now, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll notice that it also is tracking Visionary Realms. If they're online on Twitch, it will tell you, hey, these guys are online. You should probably go watch them. And eventually, when the game is released, we will actually have featured streamers, people that are part of the guild who decided, hey, I want to stream this. And they'll show up here for you to watch. You'll be able to find the best content. If you're just relaxing, maybe you can't play for some reason, you can still watch. You can ask questions. You can still interact with people all from here. And that's just a very, very tiny tip of the iceberg of the stuff that we're going to do with this site. And that's why I spent so many hours I'm barely seeing straight to get this done by my deadline.
Awesome.
Dun 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 dun.
So basically, guys, sign up, log in. We'll get everything done. Is the roster up?
There is a roster. There's only 2 members on the website now, you and I.
Okay.
But that's why it's not being shown yet. I'm waiting until it's filled out a little bit just in case there's any kind of issues.
So,
but if you want, you can go ahead and just go to, I can give you the address and you can check it out.
Okay.
Because it is there, it's just not linked.
So anybody in the guild, anybody interested in staying in contact with us, please sign up. And if you encounter any issues whatsoever, contact our web admin, Lexa, or pass it on to Delindsay or myself or Kodiak, anyone in an official role, and we'll pass it on to Lexa and help us out, bug out some of these bugs we have maybe that come along. Like Lexa's already said, this is still in the works, but the site is working for you to be able to sign up, and we can be able to finally give you a portal to actually do stuff and see that you're actually a part of something apart from Discord and whatever. So please sign up. And Lex has given me the link.
I'm actually hearing that the sign-ups aren't working just yet. I will get on that as soon as I can and get that fixed.
Oh, Lexa.
You meet out by the flagpole in 10 minutes.
Hey, during the show, I've already fixed 17 errors during the show.
So with that, guys,
it's pre-alpha. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
pretty much.
We're still not in. We still haven't invited our pre-alpha testers in yet. We're getting there. Okay.
Now you too can sign up for the Voices of Terminus web pledge.
All right. With that, I think we can say goodnight.
Yeah.
I think. Anything else you got to add to it?
I'll get that sign up fixed as soon as I can, guys.
All right. So, thanks for joining us, and join us next week, next Tuesday for Tavern Talk Tuesday with Delindsay, and on Thursday we'll be with Delindsay again. Do you know what you're talking about next Thursday, Dan?
I haven't quite decided yet,
Ooh.
but I'm leaning towards maybe the boring humans, perhaps. Okay. Or shall we talk about something else?
We
It's
shall
a good
see.
question. We shall see.
So, with that, guys, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next Tuesday, 4 p.m.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Good night,
don't forget to support VR, and remember, the cutoff is 12 September for alpha access.
Yep.
So don't forget, go out there and pledge. Get your $50 pledge today. Ba-ba.
Yep.
Get it while you can.
Get it while it's hot.
All right. Good night, gents. And
good night,
ladies and
ladies.
everybody.
Good night, fellas.